time that we've had this occurrence, and today it's a very exciting time for me to have Natalia Tanner with us. I think a well-lived life is one that's very complex, and certainly having gotten a chance to really know Natalia better, her life has been an extremely complex time, and she's going to share a lot of the major episodes in this very rich life. I've talked to various people. I talked to Dale Garrell, and he talked about how when she would make comments in the early years of SAHM, that there was a real wisdom behind what she said. It was always right on target. I talked to Renee, and Renee told me that in her early days, Natalia was really a mentor, a model for her, and a good ski instructor too. They went to Chamonix Glacier in Europe together, and Natalia's been skiing in Europe 4 different times, and it's one of her interests. So it's just really a delight for me to introduce you to her, and I'd like you to just start off with some comments, and then we'll start the interview.
Well, thank you, many friends, for coming to share this moment with me. I think the most difficult part of the reflections of my life was that how can you put 56 years into an hour and a half? So we just selected some highlights. I brought some background pictures of my family, and I'm going to pass those around. I think I'll split them. They're in order. It shows my maternal and paternal family, and then you can exchange them at the back. These are the first, and they have notes on the bottom so you can see. And if you would like to start these. There's one that is not encased. I was the poster girl for the Wayne State University's faculty in 202, so that, and the others are all self-explanatory. Thank you very much.
I think we'll begin, and as always, we begin with your ancestor, early years, your grandparents particularly, which is a very interesting introduction, so it's all yours.
Well, my background was one of being a blessed child. I did not come from a deprived background at all. So that when you come from this kind of background, you know you have to be successful. There's no ifs and ands. My paternal grandfather was a professor of biology and horticulture at Alcorn State University, which is the oldest land-grant college for African Americans in the United States. And you have to understand that the traditionally black colleges before desegregation were like an oasis. This is where all the intellectuals were. This is where all the performing artists came. So it was a very enriching experience for me. So my father went to college there, and his brother went to college there because his father was on the faculty, and they could go free. And then he and his brother both went to Meharry Medical College. My uncle graduated the year before my father. And later on, I'll tell you about my graduation. Then my mother's family was from New Orleans. And my mother's family moved to Chicago when I was about, I don't know whether they were living there before my mother married my father, but anyway, they were living in Chicago. And my father moved to Chicago when I was about a year of age, so that I grew up in Chicago. My father was a family practitioner. He was a person of, he was a Southern gentleman. This is the way I will put it. I don't ever remember my father dancing with a lady without his gloves on at a party. And he and my mother got married. They had 2 children. I had a brother who died within 12 hours after he was born. So I grew up as an only child, which I did not like. We lived in, let me tell you a little bit about my childhood. I used to spend every summer of my childhood until my grandfather, my paternal grandfather, died on Alcorn State University's campus. And this was a wonderful experience. I learned how to ride horses. I had a tree house, I had a playhouse, I had a red bike, and my grandfather told me, if you don't learn how to ride that bicycle by sundown, I'm going to take it away from you. So I learned how to ride. So I would spend from when school would let out in the spring until Labor Day, I would spend my summers there. And this was such a wonderful experience for me. And my grandfather just taught me so much. I cannot kill a plant. I used to follow him around in the greenhouses. No matter what I do, I can't kill a plant. And this has been very good. Then the family, the university physician had 3 daughters who, they were in my age group, so I would play with them. But we just run over the campus, and I just had a wonderful time.
Now, your maternal grandparents, can you talk a little bit about your grandfather and grandmother?
Yes. Well, both of my paternal and maternal grandparents, they each had 8 children. In my mother's family, there were 5 girls and 3 boys. And my grandfather was a Pullman porter on the Santa Fe Express. This was the luxury train. This provided him, he worked for years, this provided him with a very adequate income for his family. He educated his children. He bought us a house in the country in Paw Paw at Eagle Lake, which now belongs to me. And I've enjoyed many summers there. So that my mother went to Tuskegee Institute, and she was there when Carver was there, so that her background was very strong in chemistry.
You're talking about George Washington Carver?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, he was still there. The Peanut Man. The Peanut
Carver, I wonder.
The Peanut Man.
Yeah, oh my goodness.
So then, well, we lived in Chicago, and I went to private school before I went to regular grammar school. And the private school went to the 8th grade, but they lost their endowment. So they had to close. But I was 5 years old, ready to go to 1st grade. And in the Chicago public school system, you had to be 6 years old to go to public school, and you were supposed to show your birth certificate. Well, my mother and father said, we're not going to keep this child out of school a year. So my mother went to a Catholic school, and they accepted her application and so forth. And the next day she took me to the school, and they said, I'm sorry, we don't take colored children. So I didn't have any place to go to school. So my father's sister lived in a district where it was called Parker School, Parker Elementary School. So my father gave his sister's address, and I went to Parker Elementary School. There was only one other black student there beside me, and this was a little boy. And I really didn't know any difference. You know, I just looked at him. I said, well, he looks like me. But I didn't encounter any racial problems there at all. So I went to school there for a year. And then I think, as I remember, my father moved to Mansfield, Ohio. And I went to school in Mansfield for 2 years. Then we moved back to Chicago, and he established a practice there. And then I went through the elementary schools there, which was all a very positive experience for me. I loved school. I had wonderful teachers. They encouraged me to learn and so forth.
More about your mother.
Well, my mother was a free spirit. And you'll see her pictures. She had a private pilot's license. She belonged to the Chicago Flying Group. And my mother is in an exhibit at the Smithsonian Institute as an early pioneer in black aviation. So, but she was a free spirit. When my mother passed in 1979, I established a scholarship in her name at Tuskegee Institute. And on the opening of the scholarship, the invitation said, teach their souls to fly. And then I taught. She was very active. She taught arts and crafts in senior citizen centers after she retired. She worked as a chemist at Union Carbide for many years until mandatory retirement. And then after that, she taught arts and crafts at senior citizens centers. And when she passed, they named one of the senior citizen centers after her. So that was very nice. Okay.
More about your high school, Edgewood.
Inglewood.
Yes.
Okay, when I got ready to go to high school, well, I just love school. And I have to tell you that I used to walk 8 blocks every Tuesday to the Chicago Public Library, a branch. And by the time I was 10 years old, I had read everything in the children's room. So I went to the librarian and said, "Can I read the books in the adult room?" And she said, "Yes." So the first book I read was A Tale of Two Cities. But I just loved to read, and I would go. And then my parents also, they were very much into music and art, so that I had lessons. I had music lessons at the Chicago Conservatory of Music. I had art lessons at the Chicago Art Institute from the time I was about 7 or 8 until I left for college. And I loved art. I loved to paint. It was just such a wonderful experience for me. And then I had drama, I had public speaking. So I was one of those children, you know, where the parents just, "You must do this." I think the only time my father struck me was about F sharp on the piano. He would sit with me 2 hours every day while I practiced the piano. And I told him, "I'm not a musician, but I can adapt myself to this. You know, I couldn't do improvisations, but I'm the greatest sight reader in music that you want to see." But I enjoyed it very much. So that when it came time for me to go to high school, there was a new high school that had been built in a predominantly black neighborhood, but it was a beautiful high school, well-staffed and so forth. So my father said, "I think you should go to this high school." I wanted to go to Inglewood, where all my friends were going, but he said, "Go." Well, I had a very bad experience in that high school. My father knew most of the teachers and so forth, and I don't think that they really made a difference with me, but maybe some of the students thought they did. And I was in the bathroom washing my hands, and this girl flew into me. She says, "I don't like you." She started beating on me and scratching me. She says, "Because your father's a doctor, the teachers love you, and you have good hair." I went home. I told my father, "I cannot go to this school anymore. I want to leave," because I was very unhappy there. So that in the 10th grade, and when I went to high school, I was only 12 years old. So then I went to Inglewood High School, where all my friends were. I loved it. Blacks were in a minority, but it was a wonderful school. I was into athletics. I won 2 letters for tennis and swimming. I was the staff artist for the yearbook. I was in the National Honor Society, the International Honor Society for high school journalists, you know, and I just loved. I took Latin 3.5 years. We had a wonderful Latin teacher, and so that I really enjoyed my experience in high school very much.
And what did you write in your yearbook?
Well, you know, when you graduate, you have a chance to say what you want to do. And I said, "I want to be a rugged individualist and a credit to my race."
You carried that one out.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Then it came time to go to college. And when I graduated, I wanted to go to an Ivy League